Welcome to the Four Seasons Podcast, brought to you by B&H Wealth Strategies, serving Northeast Tennessee and Southwest Virginia since 1966. Here, we guide you through the ever-changing seasons of your financial journey, offering insights to help you grow, protect, and enjoy your wealth. Ready to turn your financial dreams into reality? Dare to dream. And now, here's your host, President of B&H Wealth Strategies, Jeff Bingham.
One unexpected health event can reshape a lifetime of planning. Long-term care coverage may be more essential than you think. Welcome back, everybody. Skip Monty, co-host / producer, back in the studio with President of B&H Wealth Strategies, Jeff Bingham. Jeff, hope the week's been treating you well.
It has, Skip, and at least as we're recording this, it's Friday the 13th, so we'll take that as a good omen, not a bad omen. So yeah,
Amen.
it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Didn't even think about that. Hadn't
no,
even
it
thought
is
about
like I said, no black cats crossing
that.
our
No,
path,
no,
right?
no,
Yeah,
no, 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 no,
or
no.
something like that. Whatever
Well,
all that
cool.
is.
Well, Jeff, one of the things that's been on my mind lately, and it's something I've had to deal with personally, is long-term care. My parents uh, were elderly and had health issues, and there was a lot of challenges there. So let's just dive right in. How important, and I'm sure lots of our listeners and viewers have had the same experience and concerns, and want to plan for it in their long-term planning. How important is long-term care coverage in my financial planning?
Uh, Very important is what I would say. I mean, again, when we start talking about, kind of dare to dream, the where are you, where are you now, where you want to go, and how do you want to get there? Usually the as those conversations begin and you start, talking about this planning and the clients are then are kind of, you're giving them this landscape and they start painting it. They don't talk about long-term care. It's not many, unless they've experienced, but again, more and more people have experience with parents, or other loved ones, aunts, uncles, whatever, that have gone through it. So there is much more awareness of it now, but it is not the thing that bubbles to the top to begin with. Right. But it is, pardon the pun for me, but it's a blind spot that we want to identify. So it's a blind spot that doesn't have to stay a blind spot. So you identify this as a possibility, and you look at people and you understand their, not their genetics, let's say, but what was their experience with their parents? Where are they in their life? What does their health look like when they're sitting across the table from me and whatnot that you look at? But it is, it's out there. Most people are going to we used to say, I think, if I get this right, there are 3 kinds of people that are out there: those that are currently giving care to someone, those that have given care to someone, and those that are gonna give care to someone. I mean, that's the 3. There really are only 3 realities that are out there. And so, that's and I have and Matt to a degree as well, and his experience in it now is also is that, I had both, my ex-wife, now, but her parents and my parents. So we were in the middle of caregiving for our parents, for a number of years, and it's very expensive. It's very emotionally taxing and physically taxing, and so, you've got to try to plan for that. And so we can talk about what are the, how do you, what tools are available, right, to try to not let it wipe out a lifetime worth of wealth accumulation, because like I said, people that we're when we're planning and looking at, retirement or just financial freedom, which is I think a term that I like to use more, it's as opposed to just, retirement, because I don't think anybody should ever just retire completely from everything. That's not how we're built. It's not how we're wired. It's not how God made us. But, we move to a different chapter in that. And so we might, where we find work and service, may not be employment, or you might want to do something else. So you've got to have financial freedom to do that. So you're trying to plan for financial success, and that financial success and that freedom and that legacy that you want to pass along to the next generation, which is what most people's goals are, certainly that have children, or even to charities. They don't want that wiped out, by having just to pay for your last years of life, in a facility, or for caregivers coming in your home just to take care of you, right? Just to kind of, to bathe and feed you and, take care of your needs. I mean, there's, but that happens, with great regularity. So, you know, what what are what are some of the steps that you can take to do that? To try to insure that risk, because it is an insurable risk to a degree. But long-term care insurance, and I've been doing this for a long time. It ain't what it used to be, right? As far as being able to, um, the coverage, the affordability, the various things. Because when I started some 35, 36 years ago now, I guess. And long-term care insurance was really just kind of coming into the marketplace. The need was there, and so the insurance companies that wanted to venture into that, began to develop policies and price those policies at that point in time. And insurance companies are phenomenally good at managing risk and pricing and doing their calculations, their actuarial calculations, but they missed a lot of that in the early, going back into the 90s, and those policies that were out there, what we call indemnity policies. They used to be quite, if you got them at the right time, I mean, you might have thought it was expensive at the time, but I think based on what it looks like now, not even, not at all, but it was affordable. The coverage was substantial and robust. But the insurance companies were also, though they were smart enough, when they did, as a result, they did underprice those. They also put in, mechanisms in there to where they could up the price over a period of time. Right now, they have to go to the state. It has to be of the class. They can't do it just on an individual basis. So it's a process they have to go through. But they left that open ended, so it wasn't a fixed premium price like a lot of people really probably thought they were getting, back, all those many years ago. But so they've seen those prices increase, but it's still generally those things are still a pretty good deal. So the current marketplace is a little, if you want indemnity policies straight like that, they're definitely more expensive. They're usually limited somewhat in coverage. And But there are other alternatives that are out there.
Very interesting. So, are there particular age ranges or life stages when people should start considering long-term options?
Before you get sick and need it. Uh,
Yeah, that'd be good.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, and the younger you do it, now you don't wanna be too young to do it because it's not crazy. I mean, the way I would some ways you kinda think about this, and we used to, and I think still kinda present it this way, is that when you're working, you have disability insurance, right? Disability, so if you become disabled and you can't work, it replaces your income from work, right? So during your work, so you're gonna, let's say you were gonna work to age 65, 62, 65 years old, whatever that time period is. So you're covered with a disability income replacement policy there. You can go out. Sometimes your employers, if you work someplace, they will give you access to a policy like that. Sometimes they'll fund it for you, and sometimes you can add on to that, or you can go into the marketplace and have those. I had one for me because of my eyesight, as an example, and had one for years for income replacement kind of situations. And so, but when you're leaving the workplace and you're planning to leave the workplace and now you've got a retirement plan in place, well, what's the natural replacement for disability income replacement is long-term care insurance, because it is, in a sense, kind of, disability coverage for your retirement income that you're going to have come streaming out, right? So, and it's going to take a lot of money to go to a long-term care, facility, or if they're coming into your home, assisted living, all of those kind of things. So I guess if you heard what my message was in that, it's somewhere in that transitional phase generally from, from work to retirement, or at your main, your main job, I guess, if you will, let's call it that, is kind of the time to look at it. Doesn't mean you can't look at it beforehand, because a lot of people will come in that have been, that are in their, mid to late 50s, let's say, and they may still have a number of years for work. and they've either heard about it, but oftentimes where the catalyst for the conversation begins with my clients that are coming in that, as I just described in that age range, are their parents, right? They're having to take care of their parents. They're watching their parents have to use their money, either to pay people to come into the home, right? Caregivers that are coming in the home, because that's your first thing. Family's going to take care of you first. Then you're going to find private caregivers to come into your home because you're going to stay in your home typically as long as you can. That's just how we're hardwired to do it. It's in my experience with my clients. The next phase of that is assisted living, right? And so when you start thinking about assisted living, at least in my experience with my parents, it was pretty, my mom, my dad never went, but my mom did, was very reluctant, and I would say obstinate and, stubborn to go into one because you don't wanna leave your home, so, you've gotta but the inevitably or that inevitably kinda comes true, and generally, I will say this, having caregivers in your home versus going to an assisted living facility, if that's kinda what you're transitioning to be, is less expensive at an assisted living facility if you have to have kinda round the clock at home. It's expensive, but again, there are policies that help take care of that. There are ways to do it with different types of investment tools that are kind of hybrids with life insurance and annuity products that insurance companies have created to where it leverages up the dollars that you invest. It's not going to give you the growth that you would think of from a typical investment, but it multiplies the money factor should you need it for a long-term care event. Maybe you put $100,000 into just a number. I can do easy math on it. Maybe it moves that $100,000 should you need it for a long-term care event. It might multiply it to $200,000, maybe 2x it, or maybe even more for a period of time. So you now have a pool of money that you've kind of put out there designated for that right there. Those are, if you've got the money, those are easier to qualify for, from an underwriting standpoint, because again, it's not easy to qualify to get a long-term care insurance the older you get because they're looking not at at your death rate. They're not looking at mortality. They're looking at your morbidity. So you've got arthritis, you've got, you know, congestive heart failure. You've got whatever your terrain looks like, right? That's what they're going to underwrite. And so they're looking at the morbidity of that and the likelihood that you're going to need that kind of care. And so it becomes the older you get, not always true, but the older you get, the more of those, kind of creeping age related diseases and ailments that are going to affect the price and probably because they're and not only affect the price of a long-term care policy, but the probability of the need that you're going to have for it. Because I think it's probably, I think if you're 65 years old, there's probably a better than a two-thirds almost a 70% chance that one of you, if you're a husband and wife, is going to need some kind of help, some kind of long-term care stay or in-home health care is going to be required before you die. I mean, the stats are staggeringly high. I mean, so if you can insure it, you do it. Now you can, we used to always use the expression, you can be rich, you can be insured or be poor, right? Or be poor, be rich, or be insured, is what we would say the three things to cover long-term care. Being poor means if you don't have any money or you spend all your money, Medicaid will cover long-term care expense, right? Medicaid, not Medicare, Medicaid. And how do you qualify for Medicaid? It's a welfare program, right? I mean, for all intents and purposes. And so but you have to, what are the qualifications for Medicaid? Being broke, right? Not having any money. So if you rip through your assets, or you don't have any assets, you're poor and you're insured and you'll have access to a facility. Be rich, you can afford to self-insure yourself. The thing though that we'll see about people that are rich, they will almost always insure that risk because it just makes sense, right? If I can afford the insurance, why would I want to leverage out my money over here when for a few, percentage points on the actual need that I might have, they'll do that. That's what rich people do. You insure, again, if I'll talk to people all the time when we talk about long-term care insurance about insuring the risk. It's like, well, you insure your home, right? So you have a $300,000 home, you got a portfolio worth, half $1,000,000, $1,000,000, whatever it is. Do you have to insure your home? I mean, you got enough money to replace the home should it ever, burn down, let's say, right? You could self-insure that. How many people do you know that self-insure their home? Like almost none, right? I mean, if your if your insurance runs out on your home, you'll move heaven and earth to get an insurance policy put back in place as soon as you realize that maybe a premium payment's been made or you've been canceled or whatever the case is. But we don't do that for long-term care. What are the chances of your house burning down are pretty small. The chances of you needing your physical being burning down, using the same analogy, right, and needing help for long-term care is, like I said, it's about if you're 65 years old, there's probably a 65 to 70% probability you're gonna need some type of care that you're gonna have to pay for out of your pocket or some insurance pocket if you can insure it. So, long answer.
That's all right, but a good one. Very, very informative. Now, real quick, as we wrap up, if someone's not quite sure whether long-term care can fit in their financial plan, what steps would you recommend they take at this point?
And I guess when you're if the question that I understood you to ask it and make sure this is that can you afford to fund it, right? Can you
Right.
afford to fund it and find an insurance, whatever type of strategy it is, whether it's be one of these hybrid, kind of investment or life insurance policies that can leverage up some money for long-term care or paying what we would call an annual kind of premium, right? An ongoing premium product, kind of an indemnity type product, if you will. Like a health insurance policy almost, right? For long-term care. It indemnifies. Well, what you look at is that if you're not sure, then you come sit down with somebody like me, and I'll plug the commercial here. We go through our 4 seasons, our retirement, GPS system, right? And so here's your need for, here's your assets, here's where you are, here's where you want to go, and where you want to go is how much money you want to have coming in on a regular basis and where it's going to come from. Is that affordable? Are you on track to do that? Do you have enough money if you're in retirement? Is it going to last as long as you do? Yes. But what happens if I have a long-term care, thing? Well, it's going to be cost this much money. It's going to really be hard on these assets. Well, if we can find a way to fund that, right? Either take some of those assets and fund, a hybrid policy or cash flow out an indemnity policy, we price that in, and that's part of your living expense, right? You take that asset and set it aside for that. And can you still afford to live the lifestyle you want to live during retirement and have that insurance, that peace of mind insurance coverage over here, on the other side funded to do the same thing. So you just you price it into your overall plan and you can come up with a probability of success based on that. And that's the and then if that's the case, then you go out and you find that plan and you buy that, you put that plan in place, you get that insurance policy there to cover hopefully, as my dad used to always say when we would put, long-term care policies in place for folks, and he said, "I hope this is the worst buy that you've ever made," right? Um, but, but often it's not. And, it just meant that obviously that you're insuring this risk. I hope it never happens to you. And you just, you pay these premiums all these years, but you never had to call on it because you don't suffer through, through long-term care need, and it's tough. I mean, it's tough on families, man. I mean, I've seen it. Like I said, it was brutal on, and I say brutal, it's probably too strong a word. It was very difficult for, both my former in-laws and for my parents and different. They were uniquely different, but they were very much the same at in the result of what they were, the cost, the expense, you know, um, my in-laws had long-term care coverage that did beautifully, but they still, had a lot of money out of pocket, and my parents, because of where they were and couldn't get it at the time because of their health issues, before they could get long-term care, on a reasonable basis, paid out of pocket. It was, you'll spend a few dollars doing that, you know? So,
Oh, a lot of money. I've got personal experience with that too. So,
yeah,
well,
it's
Jeff,
crazy.
definitely it is crazy and it's something that affects everybody. I mean, everybody in one way or another. So, thank you so much for shedding light on such an important topic and such an important part of long-term financial security. So,
No, it
appreciate
absolutely
your
is.
insight.
You bet.
Absolutely. Appreciate your insight and we will see you in the next episode.
Thanks for tuning into the Four Seasons podcast, brought to you by B&H Wealth Strategies, where your financial success is our priority. Schedule your free 20-minute consultation today by calling 423-247-1152 or by visiting bhretire.com. Take the first step toward making your financial dreams come true. Until next time, remember, every season is the right season to plan for your future. Securities and registered investment advisory services offered through Silver Oak Securities, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. B&H Wealth Strategies and Silver Oak Securities, Inc. are not affiliated.